Currently, America is facing a serious inflation problem. People are saying that recession could be on the horizon. It seems that the Biden administration could do something about this. It could open up the energy industry, but it's not taking that action.
Yes, there's no doubt the Biden administration could limit the suffering of the American public. Instead, we seem to be seeing signs of something ominous, perhaps even more existential on the horizon. Let's dig into the details.
I'm Brendan Fallon.
And I'm Lee Smith. And we're over the target.
This isn't just the opinion of a small group of people. I was looking at a recent poll from Trafalgar Group, and apparently it's 53% of Americans have this impression that the Biden administration is intentionally allowing inflation to happen so that fossil fuels can be phased out. And it's actually 25%. Among the Democrats taking the survey, 25% had this impression as well.
Wow. I mean, it's possible. We don't. Is there information in the polling whether the Democrats polled think that this is a good idea? Because there are no doubt some people who think it's a good idea. And I think that most Americans, we would like to have as the cleanest energy possible. And of course, nuclear energy is very clean. Natural gas is a lot cleaner than oil. So I think most Americans feel that way. The concern for people is to make this transition too quickly like this. It's not just about the pain we're feeling on this end. It's also about the pain on the other end, by which I mean once we get to the other side, we know because we've seen things happening around the country, Texas, California, with the brownouts, the blackouts. We've seen things happening in Europe. We know that there is not enough so-called clean energy or green energy to make up for the amount of fossil fuels. We know that people cannot afford the whatever it costs right now, maybe $100,000 to get an electric car. So what happens? There's the pain on this end. There's going to be the pain on that end as well. Why is the Biden administration hurting the American public, and the American public knows what's happening here?
One of the main criticisms of the Biden administration is the fact that it shut down the Keystone Pipeline. There's also been criticism of it not opening up oil leases for further oil drilling. But these solutions, I mean, these wouldn't produce immediate alleviation of this problem, right?
Well, I mean, but people looking down the future and knowing that there were plans in place to address what is becoming an energy crisis, a self-inflicted energy crisis. This is not about Vladimir Putin's price hikes, right? It's about Joe Biden going in on day one and shutting down Keystone and sending a message across the industry. And look, here's an important thing, right? We know there's not enough energy on the other side. Otherwise, the Biden administration and advocates, proponents of the Green New Deal would say, look, we're all going to go through a little pain right now, right? And it's tough. But don't worry, as we're making that transition, once we get to the other side, it's going to be fine, right? Because we're not only talking about green energy, we're talking about cheap energy too.
You're saying they're not making that promise. They're not giving that hope.
Yeah, right. They're not making that promise because they know it's not true. Because if they were to tell people what's really happening, people would be... That's why they're lying right now to the American public, saying it's about Vladimir Putin's price hikes, right? It's not. Right? If they were to say, look, don't worry about the transition to green energy. We got you covered. It's painful now, but within the year, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Instead, what? They're lying. It's about Vladimir Putin. It's about how, we don't know what happened. We don't know how to curtail energy. We don't know why gas prices are going up. Let's release some of the strategic gas reserve and let's blame it on the Saudis who are price gouging. That's an indication right there that they're lying to us. And they know that once we get on the other side, it's going to be, if we get on the other side, as they hope, to be on that other side is going to be painful because there's not enough energy. If that weren't the case, they'd be telling the truth.
So we have this spiraling energy crisis, and on a global level, we have the president of Ukraine warning of a food crisis, a global food shortage coming.
My understanding from farmers and food security experts who focus on the United States is that the United States is not looking at a food crisis, not a food shortage. There's too much food in the United States. What we are seeing, though, is what we'll continue to see. We will continue to see food prices rise. Right? But combine that, and again, they talk about that there won't be a food shortage. But remember, one of the other things the Biden administration is doing, and that is opening our southern borders, where there are people from other parts of the world where there will be food shortages who are now entering our southern border. And the question is, what kind of pressure is that going to put on the American food supply? What kind of pressure is that going to put on American citizens, right? We've talked about changes in voting. We've talked about changes in the composition of cities and particular areas. Are they trying to change it from red to blue? Let's remember, if we have a lot of hungry people crossing that border, what kind of pressures will it put on our food supply?
These are three really debilitating effects that are coming out of these policies. You've mentioned energy crisis and also this influx of people at the southern border.
Right.
And combined with this is what we mentioned before, the fact that there seems to be some level of intentionality behind it. I mean, and this is what, there's a large swath of the American population that have this impression.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's entirely intentional. Right? The Biden administration could close the borders if they wanted to. We have to take these factors together, as you said, and recognize we have to be honest and describe what's really going on. And that is the Biden administration and the ruling class, and on behalf of the ruling class, are making war against the U.S. public. Right? This is what happens when you limit access to fuel, when you limit access to food, and when you create the conditions, right, for an invasion. This is war, right? The Biden administration is making war on the American public. There's no other way to look at it at this point.
This is quite a startling allegation to start the week off with, Lee. I've got to say, the signs are certainly there. And for one, we're certainly seeing war propaganda play out. Recently, we had Adam Schiff on the Colbert Show talking about giving his take on what's going to happen with January 6th. We had President Biden on the Jimmy Kimmel Show talking about gun bans and abortion. Maybe we can take a little bit of a look at that now.
I wish we were back in the day when the American public would sit for hours and hours at a time and watch hearings of national consequence, and they would be presented, by major networks rather than, the talking heads on Fox News. But we're in a different world now.
Many of them do. I get in trouble for saying this, but I get on, we have very different views on a lot of things, but I've always had a straight relationship with the Republican leader, Mitch McConnell.
I don't know about you, Lee, but when I was a younger man, I used to watch shows like David Letterman, and they'd have people on like, Harrison Ford, Cate Blanchett. It'd be really interesting and amusing. I'm just not getting the same feel from Adam Schiff and Joe Biden here.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, right. Not a lot of comedy there. Not a lot of laughs. Well, look, what's happening is you put it exactly right. It's propaganda. Another word for propaganda are information operations, psychological operations, and these are attached to real operations. And that's what we mean when we're talking about opening the border, when we're talking about limiting access to fuel. In this case, it's being limited because of the price rise, limiting access to food. These are real operations.